as well as on the ground, in any area, in the air, and on train. So they're making their moves in terms of fortifying their border, and they really think that this big wave of refugees is going to come through the region. So I just want to let it be known that Russia making big moves, along with China, sending all kinds of troops and equipment down to the border of North Korea. It's a sure sign that they're expecting something to come. I will continue to update. I'll leave a link below. It's been Dabu7.
Vladimir Putin is sending troops and equipment to Russia's border with North Korea over fears the U.S. is preparing to attack Kim Jong-un. The Russian president fears there will be a huge exodus of North Korean refugees if his American counterpart, Donald Trump, launches military action against Pyongyang. It comes days after it emerged that China is also sending 150,000 soldiers to its southern frontier to cope with the tidal wave of North Koreans Beijing fears would flee across the border if war breaks out. This morning, footage emerged appearing to show how Putin is reinforcing his 11-mile border with North Korea by relocating troops and equipment. A video purports to show one of 3 trains loaded with military equipment moving towards the 11-mile-long land frontier between Russia and the repressive state. Another evidently highlights military helicopter movements towards the North Korean border and maneuvers across rough terrain by army combat vehicles. Other reports suggest there have been military moves by road as well. There have been concerns that if a conflict breaks out, Russia could face a humanitarian exodus from North Korea. But Putin has been warned, too, that in the event of a U.S. strike on Kim Jong-un's nuclear facilities, contamination could swiftly reach Russia. Railway trains loaded with military equipment moving towards Primorski region via Khabarovsk have been noticed by locals, reported Prime Media. Ruined the Russian Far East, linking the development to the North Korean crisis. The movement of military equipment by different means of transport to southern areas is being observed across Primorski region over the past week, said military veteran Stanislav Sinitsyn. Many relate this to the situation in the Korean peninsula. The video shows artillery systems that either support troops in assault or meet the aggressor. He said, "The movement of military equipment means that authorities of our country are keeping up with the situation, and take appropriate measures. The movements were a preventive but necessary measure. If the situation worsens, especially related to military events, the armed forces of all the neighboring countries obviously monitor it more closely, and we are no exception. It is not the first time that North Korea has broken the peace in the region, that's why the situation deserves attention." Russian military spokesman Alexander Gordaev declined to give the exact reasons for the troop and equipment movements but said exercises had recently ended in the Transbaikal region of Siberia. However, a number of local sources appear to believe the movements are linked to the Korean crisis. The naval port of Vladivostok, where Russia has huge military forces, is less than 100 miles from North Korea. Expert on the repressive state, Konstantin Asmolov, said, should the U.S. strike with missiles at North Korea's nuclear facilities, a radioactive cloud will reach Vladivostok within 2 hours. Asmolov, from the Russian Far Eastern Institute, warned that in the event of full-scale war hungry asylum seekers will flood into Russia. Russia on Wednesday blocked UN Security Council condemnation of Pyongyang's latest missile test, even though China, which has a major frontier with North Korea, had backed the strongly worded statement put forward by the United States. The proposed statement would have demanded that North Korea conduct no further nuclear tests and halt missile launches. Pyongyang carried out a failed test on Sunday. Russia wanted to include language contained in a previous statement stressing the need to achieve a solution through dialogue, according to Council diplomats. Moscow's Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov said, "Unfortunately, we have to admit that the risk of a serious conflict in this region has substantially increased." He called for a demonstration of responsibility from all sides to avoid escalation.
Hey everyone, it's Dina Calmetta here with CWW7 News, and I wanted to bring you guys some updates in regards to the United States North Korea, Japan, and China, and we're going to touch base on Russia just a little bit. But here were the top headlines within the last 48 hours. North Korea threatens to strike U.S. bases in Asian Pacific and South Korean presidential palace if the United States attacks. We will go to war if they choose, says North Korea, warning Trump not to provoke him. The U.S. may launch strike if North Korea reaches for the nuclear trigger. North Korea may be capable of sarin-tipped missiles. Japan is readying for a North Korean emergency. Air China cancels some Beijing North Korean flights. China warns World War III is inevitable as North Korea prepares for their latest nuclear test. U.S.-North Korean war may break out by mistake if North Korea provokes Trump, experts are warning. North Korea says the thermonuclear war could start at any moment, and the U.S. is on the brink of World War III. U.S. has dropped the largest non-nuclear bomb in Afghanistan, calling it the mother of all bombs. However, Russia has the father of all bombs, and it is 4 times more powerful than Trump's mother of all bombs that killed 36 IS militants in Afghanistan. China has flaunted its mighty missiles on state TV as Beijing urges North Korea to give up its nuclear ambitions. And the Pentagon is getting ready to protect the electric grid from a massive attack. Let's start with this headline in regards to North Korea stating thermonuclear war could start at any moment, and the U.S. is on the brink of World War III. North Korea's vice foreign minister claimed the president of the United States would be to blame after a series of antagonizing military exercises and tweets. The vice minister stated that the country was ready to use its powerful nuclear deterrent if President Trump continues to provoke North Korea. He said, "We will go to war if they choose. If the U.S. comes with reckless military maneuvers, then we will confront it with the DPRK's preemptive strike. We've got a powerful nuclear deterrent already in our hands, and we certainly will not keep our arms crossed in the face of a U.S. preemptive strike." North Korea's KCNA news agency added in a statement that the U.S. introduces into the Korean Peninsula, the world's biggest hotspot, huge nuclear strategic assets, seriously threatening peace and security of the peninsula and pushing the situation to the brink of war. This has created a dangerous situation in which a thermonuclear war may break out at any moment on the peninsula and posed serious threat to the world peace and security, to say nothing of those in Northeast Asia. And North Korea isn't the only one warning that war is just about to break out at any moment. China's foreign minister also is warning that an armed conflict with North Korea may break out at any moment, urging Washington and North Korea to tone down their hawkish rhetoric and realize the price to pay for both sides if a new Korean war were to start. The extraordinary warning comes amid massive U.S. military buildup near the Korean Peninsula, with the carrier strike group USS Carl Vinson headed towards the region. While U.S. President Donald Trump is threatening to take care of the North Korean problem, North Korea says it is ready to repel any military action. Lately, tensions have risen with the U.S. and the ROK on one side and the DPRK on the other. He cautioned both sides that if a war occurs, the result is a situation in which everybody loses and there can be no winner, and that whichever side provoked a conflict must assume the historic responsibility and pay the corresponding price. Earlier in the day, he stated that Washington and North Korea must refrain from provoking and threatening each other, whether in words or actions, and not let the situation get to an irreversible and unmanageable state. He also stated that force cannot solve the problem. Dialogue can be the only channel to resolving the problem. China, North Korea's close ally and main trading partner, does not welcome North Korea's nuclear program, but advocates finding political solution to the crisis. For its part, Russia, which also shares a land border with the reclusive state, expressed deep concern over the mounting tensions on the Korean Peninsula. The tension on the Korean Peninsula was one of the topics Wang Yi he discussed with the Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in a Friday phone call. Moscow stands for political diplomatic reconciliation and urges all parties to show patience and refrain from any actions which might mean making provocative steps. So now we're hearing Russia's advice. Very interesting. If a war were to break out between the United States and North Korea, would Russia protect North Korea? This could literally turn into a world war, you guys. But let's move on to the next headline. China has mobilized 25,000 extra troops to North Korea and puts the country on nationwide alert. All 5 military regions from China have been ordered by Beijing to maintain readiness for the possibility of a conflict along their border. China has already sent 150,000 troops to the North Korean border on Sunday, as reported by Taiwan's China Post. And we cannot leave out Japan. The Japan News is stating that Japan readying for North Korea emergency. The Japanese government, which has asked the United States to provide advance consultation if it decides to launch military action against North Korea, has ramped up preparations for unexpected situations. The Japanese government anticipates the possibility of a joint response with the United States should a contingency arise. The Prime Minister stressed on Wednesday that the region is becoming increasingly tense, and U.S. President Donald Trump has stated that all options are on the table. It's a fact. Tensions are rising, stated the Prime Minister. If an unexpected situation occurs, we'll ask the United States to cooperate in rescuing the abduction victims. The Trump administration is reviewing U.S. policy toward North Korea and has not ruled out military options, including a preemptive strike. It goes on further to say during a series of meetings between Japanese and U.S. officials, the Japanese side asked for advance consultation regarding any U.S. military action against North Korea. The U.S. side is said to have responded positively to the request. This is because Japan would need to take appropriate precautions, given that, as an ally of Washington, it could be a target for retaliation should the U.S. military attack North Korea. It is expected that a North Korean attack on Japan would involve ballistic missiles. The Japanese government has been bolstering defense measures against ballistic missiles, including making permanent in August 2016 an order to the self-defense forces to intercept and destroying incoming missiles. And the Pentagon is getting ready to protect the electric grid from a massive attack, amid warnings that North Korea and Iran have plans to take out parts of the U.S. electric grid through a cyber attack or atmospheric nuclear blast. The Pentagon is taking steps to both protect the nation's communications and power lifeline. The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency has charged BAA Systems to map a system that can detect a cyber attack and gin up an alternative communications network for military and civilian use if the grid is fried. Former CIA Director James Woolsey has been warning for years that the grid is extremely vulnerable, and recently the Pentagon and some states have taken the warning seriously. Woolsey and former EMP Commission Chief of Staff Peter Vincent Pry have pointed a finger at North Korea, which is now threatening the U.S. DARPA's focus is on thwarting a cyber attack by Pry, and Woolsey have also warned that North Korea or Iran could attack the grid with an atmospheric nuclear explosion over the East Coast that would disable the grid, and that would end up leading to the death of 90% of those in the East. The DARPA plan presented in Defense Systems has several elements to react to an attack. First, it would include ways to sense an imminent attack that would trigger protections, and if damaged, it would have an alternative way for communications killed in the attack to continue in a backup system, key for the military and presumably the financial system. It won't be ready, however, until 2020. In a statement, DARPA said it is interested specifically in early warning of impending attacks, situation awareness, network isolation, and threat characterization in response to a widespread and persistent cyber attack on the power grid and its dependent systems. And it goes on finally to say the purpose for this program is to provide a technology that quickly isolates both the enterprise IP network and the power infrastructure networks to disrupt malicious cyber attacks. It's about time they're doing something about the electric grid here in the United States. We are definitely too vulnerable right now. But let's move on and talk about Russia briefly. A senior Russian lawmaker is stating that the U.S.